Welcome to the Prep Pigskin Report podcast, hosted by Papa Pig himself, Paul Rudy.
Welcome to PPR podcast number 39. Everybody knows the man to my right. His name is Burt Grossman. And in the middle, in the hot seat for a second time, another Pitt Panther. Would you like to introduce, Burt?
I will. I guess you all watched him on the draft. Lewis Riddick, co-host of the draft with Mel Kiper. I have a question for you, Lewis, because I was reading over the weekend, Adam Schefter put out a tweet on how busy you are. So you did Thursday, Friday draft with Mel Kiper and that beautiful pink blazer you had on. Then you went to Pitt and gave a commencement speech at their graduation. You got an honorary doctorate.
Yeah,
then,
how about that?
And you might have met with the Steelers about the opening for the GM job.
Well, you were 3 for 4, man. You were 3 for 4.
I'm just saying what Adam said. I'm saying what Adam said.
No. He said I was still in the running for the GM spot, and I'm trying to keep the comments.
Let me give you the point. All right, let me give you the point of the question. I binge watched Ozark all weekend.
Yes, same here.
And then had trouble recycling all the wine bottles I used afterwards. And you've done all that in 3. Where did we go wrong? We went to the same school.
Hey, look, man. Like I've told you many different times, Burt. Your career and how good you were, you don't have to compare your career to anybody. Okay?
I want a doctorate. I want a doctorate from Pitt.
You were one of the best to ever play there.
I want a doctorate.
I don't know. You know what? I'll talk to Chancellor Gallagher about
I appreciate that.
Lewis, can I ask you, because I'm always interested in these big public speaking deals, something like this, where kids are going to remember that you were their commencement speaker. How much time did you put in? Give me a little sample. What was your best line? What was the message you were trying to deliver? Share with us something from that.
Well, the message really was, I think every kid when they're sitting there, right? I mean, my daughter graduates from Villanova in 2 weeks. So, like, she has asked me, well, Dad, what's next? What's the next step do I take? How do I go about trying to use my degree so I can have a successful life? And I asked her, well, how do you define success? That's number one. I mean, because it has it can look a lot of different ways. Anyway, that was the message to the kids that were sitting there, which is, first of all, success is probably for most of you not going to be linear. It's not going to be some straight line right to the top. You're not going to go, well, this is what I want to do, and it's just going to go zoom, and you're going to get there and be rich and retire when you're 40. It's probably not going to happen. You're probably going to have to reinvent yourself a couple of different times. You're probably going to get knocked down a couple of different times, a couple of different ways. So you better continue to, really right now, to continue to prepare yourself to accept that, embrace it, and move on, and then continue to strategize and then execute on whatever it was that you want to do. And you may be doing things, man, that totally have nothing to do with what you just spent 4 years studying. And that's okay too. So, I mean, that's really what it was. Don't get down on yourself. Understand that you're probably going to have setbacks, but just continue to be able to reinvent and continue to push forward. And I spoke to a lot of kids afterwards, man. That's kind of the kind of thing people want to hear real, not some great success story that you're sitting up there and they're going, well, I can't do that. My life's not going to look like that. They don't want something they can't relate to. So I thought it worked out good.
The water is much deeper with Lewis than with you.
It is. That's the point I was trying to make, but I'm not deep enough to make it.
All right, Lewis, can we talk draft with you?
Yeah.
Because obviously, I'm sure you're well aware, we had a bunch of kids from our area make their bones, if you will, or start to make their bones. Can we start with the Saints trading up to get Chris Olave? What did they get?
Oh, wow. Chris is Mr. Smooth, man. This dude, as a route runner, I remember, and I'm not trying to compare Chris Olave to Jerry Rice, all right? But I remember playing against Jerry and thinking Jerry makes every route look the same. As soon as he comes off the line of scrimmage, he looks like he's already going full speed. You can't really read the tempo of his route because he runs every route exactly the same. That's what Chris reminded me of when I watched him. Every route looks the same. And you're sitting there going, well, he's not really going that fast. Well, yeah, actually he is. He's 4.38, 4.4. He's just super smooth. Him and Garrett Wilson together, I mean, that's unfair that they're allowed to have get that many wide receivers at Ohio State. But that's what he is, man. And he will be exactly what Jameis needs, because Jameis Winston had nothing like that last year. And that's why before he got hurt, that offense was bogging down. Jameis can throw the deep ball better than anybody in the NFL, but he had nobody.
And
he's got somebody now.
That's an interesting point because Chris was always one of those ones that you rarely see. So we would watch Chris since youth. So Chris dominated youth, and then you always wait for that. All right, you're not going to dominate in high school right away.
But he
dominated. And then he walks in high school and dominates right away. Then you're like, oh, you're going to Ohio State now. You're going to have to take a couple of years. And then freshman year just dominates right away. So he's one of those rare kids that just every level from get-go, he just dominates. And it looks like he's been there for 20 years at every level the second he walks on.
He hasn't tasted failure yet. All right, so let's work our way down then. Devin Lloyd.
Oh, man. See, if Devin had run faster at the combine in his workouts, Devin would have been a top 10 player, top 5 player. But you know how the NFL is, right? So the NFL wants to draft players with more times than not that have the so-called traits. It drives me crazy, but it's just part of it. The further you get away from actually playing games and closer to the draft, the less they value what you did on tape, the more they value what you put onto an athletic profile sheet. Devin Lloyd, you watch any tape you want at Utah. He reminds me of Darius Leonard at Indianapolis, who's an all-pro.
Right.
He can play in a 3-4, play in a 4-3. You want him to play off-ball linebacker inside, he can do that. You want him to rush outside as a 3-4 guy standing up, he can do that. He can intercept the football. He can stop the run inside or outside. There's nothing he can't do. And it really came down to how fast he ran. If he had run at his size, you know, what Devin White had run coming out of LSU, or Roquan Smith, who got drafted in Chicago, or Devin Bush when he got drafted in Pittsburgh. These guys were all top 10 inside linebackers. If he had run 4.4, he would have went top 5.
So
he's that good.
So that's my question, because we go here and it's like, and it's been going on since we've been playing him before, the timing thing.
Yeah.
When you turn on a film and you see a guy like Devin Lloyd or any guy that he doesn't make any false steps. He gets all the reads. So on the field, he's basically running a 4.5 because he doesn't waste any steps. And you get these other guys that are running 4.2s, but their footwork, their reads, their steps are so bad, they're running 4.9s on the field practically.
Yeah.
When does that change? Because it hasn't changed. I've been waiting for that to change forever.
And it won't, and I'll tell you why, Burt. Because quite honestly, I think everyone is trying to objectify football the same way they have baseball, right? So they want to make it
analytics
less emotional and about what you see and more about what's on a piece of paper, because that way, if you're wrong, the people who hold you accountable, they will say, you can go to them and say, well, look right here on this paper. It said he was this tall, this fast, and had this kind of 40. I didn't screw up. He screwed up. I didn't screw up. The coaches screwed it up. Somebody else screwed it up. It wasn't me. But if you have to literally put your actual football intelligence and your football acumen on the line, and that's what's going to have to save your job. Some guys say, well, I don't know, honestly, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, man, but I don't know how much people really know, even in the scouting world, about the game of football. I don't know how much they really believe what they're seeing.
Wow.
So it's like, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes I think it's just about, okay, I want to cover my rear end because sometimes people in this business, man, where it's so cutthroat, and we already know that the hit rate is what, I don't know, 55, 60%. If you're going to say 40% of guys are going to wash out, you want to be able to put it on them, not on you. I mean, when Russell Wilson came out, right? When Russell came out of Wisconsin, there was one knock on Russell Wilson. He's not 6'3". That's it. So that's why he goes in the 3rd round. If Russell was 6'3", 6'4", 220, he may have been the first player taken in the draft. That's how it goes, though. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
So the analytics and the numbers actually have more say in a player's draft slot than the film of him actually playing the sport of football.
It can when you're talking about the 1st round in the top 10 in particular.
Yeah,
because
you don't see that as much down the road in the rounds. That it becomes, let's look at the film.
Let me follow.
And you know what's funny about that? If I can jump in here, you know what's funny about that? When you get into, say, 4th through 7th round, a lot of times then, you know what scouts do? Well, the cost of me being wrong is much less than if I was wrong in the top 10 picks, right? So what they kind of relax and let their football IQ and what they see combined with whatever tested numbers they have all kind of come together.
Fascinating. I know what you're saying.
And you know
here.
what happens? And then you see all these guys hitting, right? And people go, well, damn, how you found him fourth, fifth, sixth rounder? It's because you know why? Because you're literally not just trying to cover your rear end net.
That is fascinating.
So maybe
Lewis.
you should trust yourself a little bit more.
That is fascinating observation. Wow. I've never heard anyone say that before. Interesting.
So you're.
Hey, can we just follow up?
Yeah.
Just because Matt Ariza, I would thought would have had all those analytics, but fell to the 6th round, third punter chosen.
Well, let me tell you what I think of Matt Ariza, and you tell me whether you agree. I mean, we talked about.
I didn't. Well, I'm just gonna tell you now. I didn't look at many punters for the draft. So
what? They don't have you on the punters? Come on.
And that's Mel.
All right. Well, tell the story.
Well, all right. So you get Matt Ariza.
But I can still chime in. So you just tell me the story.
Okay. All right. San Diego State won the Guy Award. He's the punt god. Hitting 89-yard punts. But in San Diego, you see all the stats. But what you don't look into, and this isn't a knock on him, he's also a kicker and a punter. Been since high school. Has never been a holder. People don't realize punters are holders in the NFL. You don't hold and you've never held. That's a problem. Yeah. It's also, we see these flashes. It's almost like, you're on the tour and you watch somebody can drive 400 yards off the tee every time, but can they make the sand shot or can they make some other things? And he hasn't been punting that long. So, we looked at all that and his numbers are incredible, but the hang time, direction, can't hold, some other things that he has to learn. And it wasn't so much he went in the 6th round, he was the third punter taken that people were upset with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when it comes to that, look, I think when it comes to punters and kickers, obviously you're right. You will get your value will take a hit if you're someone who hasn't held. If you're someone who, when you're talking about situational punting, like plus 50 punting, how many times you get punts down inside the 20? What's your hang time? Can you directional punt? It's great to go ahead and, so see, sometimes I remember talking to Mike Tomlin about this in particular, right? They were getting ready to play Chicago Monday night. Chicago had a punt returner named Jakeem Grant, who is just electric. He was all pro this year. He said it's not good enough to just boom it 70 yards down the field because, one, if you boom it that far, you're probably out kicking our coverage. Two, if you boom it that far and put it right down the middle of the field and give them the whole field to work with, then what good does that do me? Because now, if they just get a couple blocks with a guy as good as Jakeem, if you don't pin him on the sideline, you don't get hang time, then I don't care how far you can punt. I don't care what your average was because you're not helping our team. So there's more strategy to playing special teams than just being able, as far as a kicker is concerned, to be able to knock it, as you talked about, use the golf analogy, than to be able to just drive it 400 yards off the tee. You got to put it somewhere strategically so you can then, like in golf, hit the next shot. In football, it's so your guys can get down there and put the guy on the ground. So I think that's how, I know that's how we looked at special teams, which was, my area in the pros, how we constantly got on our punters about, hey, man, it doesn't do us any good if you're, banging out 80-yarders. Put it up in the air a little bit. Put these guys on the sideline. When teams used to try to do that to us when I was with Cleveland and punt it up and, and bang it real far down the field and put it right in the middle, Eric Metcalf was taking it 80 yards on every time. So I guess that's kind of why, maybe that kind of thing happens. But from what I understand, Mel liked him a lot. Reese Davis, who was on the air for us on Saturday, really liked this kid a lot too. So I've heard a lot of good things about him.
Yeah, I hope if it doesn't happen in Buffalo, he will get he's going to get a couple opportunities, don't you think?
I think it's going to happen. People just don't realize he was a kicker. He has only been punting a year or two. These are just things you work on.
Hey, before we get to some of the other guys, and I know your time is tight, so we're going to try, but just as it relates to being a late round draft choice, is it better to be a 6th or 7th round pick or to be an undrafted free agent going to a team that like C.J. Verdell, maybe going to someplace or Greg Bell, going someplace where they might need that 3rd or 4th running back and you have a better shot of making the team as an
what? I've always felt that being drafted is always better, although you'll hear people say, well, when you're a free agent, you can pick your spots. Well, the fact of the matter is this, they have to set the depth chart somehow. And the depth chart usually is set with draft picks getting the nod over undrafted free agents originally. Now, what you do with it after that is a totally different story. But I've always felt like just being drafted kind of gives you a leg up initially. But we've seen enough stories, man, in the NFL where hell, first round picks who get all the reps, who get all the attention in the meeting rooms, who get all the extra post-practice walkthroughs and reps from their position coaches, still can't get it. In the end, man, you just don't have as many opportunities when you're undrafted as the guys who are drafted, because
Understood.
It makes a scout look a lot better if you're drafted and you make it than undrafted guys. It just works that way.
I got one more question, Lewis, and then we won't keep you any longer. What is going on? What's changed so much that we have one quarterback in the first round taken, that's all, and then not another one till the third? I think the first running back was off in the fourth round. When did that happen? I know it's been happening slowly, but.
Well, I think with quarterbacks, Burt, it's cyclical, right? Next year, when you're talking about guys like C.J. Stroud from Ohio State, these guys are going to go. They're going to go in the top 5, top 2, maybe first overall. Next year will be a much stronger quarterback class. So quarterbacks, I think, is just cyclical. This year, the quarterbacks got hit because some people think that Kenny. Some people think that Kenny Pickett doesn't have Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen type traits. He just won't be able to be, they use this word a lot in scouting and in media sometimes. He won't be a force multiplier, meaning he can't make everybody else better. You just have to have everything set around him. So why should we draft a guy that high? Malik Willis from Liberty was one of those guys who people believe, in the media, people were pissed off that he didn't go before Kenny Pickett. Because in the media, people become conditioned to think that you just always have to draft athletes, traits. And there was a lot of people who were almost like offended that he didn't go. But there's questions about Malik. So that's why the quarterbacks got pushed down for different reasons. Running back, I think it's because, from a longevity standpoint, how many running backs make it to second contracts, the wear and tear. Burt, you hunted them for a living, man. You know how much these guys take a beating in the NFL. And teams just say, you know what? I'm not going to pay that kind of money in terms of draft capital and the salary that comes with it to draft them in the first round. So the league just kind of uniformly started pressing those guys down. Now they go in the second round, in the third round, unless you are Adrian Peterson-like, unless you're Ezekiel Elliott-like coming out and people go, well, this guy, it's him, and then it's everyone else. But we got to have that guy. Otherwise, you're getting pushed down, man. You're just getting pushed down. And I think Kyle Shanahan put it best to me, last year when I was asking him about it. I asked him why are so many of your backs good, and then why don't you guys draft them in the first, second round? He goes, because one, he said, Lewis, the fact of the matter is they get the hell beat out of them. And guys are even bigger, stronger, and faster now than when we played, 20 years ago. They just are. It's amazing. And even when we played, it was, if guys were able to hit, if defenders were able to hit the same way they were able to hit in the 90s, I'd be scared to think of what would be happening to some dudes. If you could hit guys up top the same way you could in the 90s, with the mass and the speed that these guys are generating now,
we'd have fatalities.
It'd be crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's why running backs get pushed down, because it's really just a longevity thing, man. People are afraid that these guys are only going to last 4 or 5 years, one contract. So why spend that? Why waste getting that fifth-year option on a guy who probably may not even be around for a second contract? Why don't we put it on the guys at the position you play? Guys who may be 10-year, 10-sack year guy, 10 sacks a year type guys, which we know is a premium position. That's where everybody's investing the money. And you know what's funny though is that one thing that hasn't changed is everybody is looking for guys who are 6'6", 270, who on fourth down, you just say, go get it. Go beat your guy and get the quarterback. Your type have not gone out of style.
But it's crazy because
you'd still be drafted in the top 10.
I don't see, I'm one of the ones I don't really see the value in that. Only for me, because you might take 700 snaps a year, and if you only 10 of them, you're only getting home. I understand there's pressure and everything else, but I don't see the value that much in the, especially with the rules now.
Yeah, but you know what? There's really no other way to try and. there's only two. I mean, you know this. There's only two ways to slow down today's offenses with the way the rules are, and that is affect the quarterback, put the quarterback down, or intercept the quarterback. So the DNs are getting paid, the corners, safeties, and even some linebackers now are getting paid. Actually, all guys on defense are getting paid now because the offense has free reign throughout the entire field. They can attack between the numbers, outside the numbers. They can do anything the hell they want. But the number one thing that everyone wants is they want the Burt Grossmans, the Aaron Donalds, the Warren Sapp. That's what they want, because that's the only way you can slow down Patrick. I mean, we saw it in the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay. Patrick's great until he has no offensive line, and then the next thing you know, he's running for his life. So everyone's saying, look, if at all costs, let's get enough QB hunters out here and get these, and they're always going to get paid, especially the more and more the league becomes a passing league, which I don't know how else it can become more of a passing league, because it already is. Everything is set up for them, as you know.
Yeah.
I'm just honored to be sitting next to a guy who got mentioned in the same breath as Aaron Donald.
That's because Lou's from Pitt. He always has to say that.
You know what? Look, don't let Burt fool you, man.
He's got a doctorate.
No, I know Burt.
Tell him, Dr. Riddick.
Burt's talented.
Burt tries that self-deprecating BS, but he knows that he was
he was the man. Hey,
he was one of the very best.
Louis, can I ask you one last question before we let you go?
Yeah.
While the draft was going on, which by the way has become quite a show with magicians dangling and blue groups and all that.
That crazy or what?
Analysts wearing pink jackets. I mean, it was
salmon.
Excuse me.
Salmon. I tried to tell him it's salmon.
A lot of showbiz now in your neck of the woods. But while that was going on here locally in San Diego, a lot of 7-on-7 camps or exposure camps and all these, almost I assume they're timed to correspond with the draft as the next generation of young athletes are getting ready to be college, blah, blah, blah. Is that good for football or is that bad for football?
The fact that like those camps were coming on and how
they're becoming more popular and more kids are flocking to them in hopes of creating times and metrics that will attract college recruiters.
No, I don't think it's bad. I think that's just the way it is now. That's just the landscape. So either you have to kind of immerse yourself in it and accept it, or you won't get the exposure and you won't get recruited and you won't get to where you want to get to. Everything has changed. The game has become so commercialized and so very specific about who you need to be in front of in order to get to where you want to get to, that if you don't do it, you're just going to get left behind. I told somebody a story just the other day. I think we may have talked about this before, but from 1987, which was my freshman year, till now, like recruiting is. I found out I was on the USA Today All-American team on Christmas Eve, going to the newsstand and buying a USA Today paper and looking inside to see if my face was on there. That's how I found out.
That's how I found out I was on Sports Illustrated. I went to the drugstore and it was just on the thing. Nobody calls you. You don't see it on social media, nothing. You just show up.
No, that's how it is. Now, these kids know everything. They know everything. They talk to everyone. I knew 4 or 5 guys from my recruiting class because we had played in the Big 33 Classic in Pennsylvania. Otherwise, I didn't know anybody when I showed up on campus at Pitt. I didn't know anybody. I knew who Burt Grossman was because he was from the Philadelphia area and because I had seen him on TV. But there was no way I could go, hey, Coach, can you give me Burt's cell phone and I want to text him and say, hey, and just tell him I'm a young guy coming in. Can you help me out? There's nothing like. The world has changed so much, man, that if you don't get with all the ways that the game has changed, you'll get left behind fast.